Ladies and gentlemen, I am Sid Alpha. Electronic Arts is well known within this industry to act from an extremely corporate mentality that has led to some exceptionally anti-consumer actions in the past. We've all seen it with the now infamous Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA pay-to-win loot boxes, their FIFA Ultimate Team, and their heavy-handed reliance on loot box monetization in the vast majority of their games. Electronic Arts is known as the Company of Greed, the one that brought loot boxes to governmental attention the world over, destroyers of RPGs, eaters of balance ledgers, killers of developer studios, rulers of everything AAA, kings of the Andals, first of their name, may their reign be forever shorter. But eventually, even a monolith like Electronic Arts is forced to recognize the very simple and plain fact that they are steadily fomenting unrest within the game's community, and even they have begun to take notice. However, their taking notice might not necessarily be a bad thing in this instance, but it might not be what everyone expects either. So I decided to talk to everyone today about EA's decision to return to Steam, what that will entail, as well as talk about the benefits and the drawbacks, not to mention the mentality behind the decision, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as it were. And as always, links to anything publicly available will be in the description down below. So as I said, EA has recently announced, as I'm sure many of you were previously aware, that they would be bringing their games to Steam. This was done via the EA.com news feed, in which they stated, "The partnership kicks off with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order launching on November 15th and available for pre-order today. In the coming months, players on Steam will also be able to play other major titles like The Sims 4 and Unravel 2. Multiplayer games like Apex Legends, FIFA 20, and Battlefield VR 5 or whatever will become available next year, and players on both Origin and Steam will have the ability to play together." Now, this announcement has led to a fair amount of both joy and skepticism from what I've seen over the past few days. Most people are extremely happy to see EA games come to Steam, some of whom have been claiming they are happy to have one less launcher to deal with. Unfortunately for them, that is not at all the case. Now, when you visit the Steam webpage for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, you see quite clearly that no matter what, you will still be dealing with the Origin client, much in the same way that Ubisoft games on Steam still require the Uplay launcher. Now, that will appear to be the norm for paid games such as Star Wars. However, free games such as Apex Legends will not require the Origin client and will launch directly from Steam, as was stated by a Respawn developer on Reddit. However, EA's Charlemagne on Reddit claims something a bit different. Now, in a Reddit thread, Charlemagne confirmed that the Origin launcher is being used in the Steam games to keep those games up to date. And in response to a Reddit commenter posting a link to the Respawn dev statement, Charlemagne said the following: "I'm not going to pretend to be a technical expert on this, but I think he and I are both correct, since we're talking about two somewhat separate aspects of the launcher functions. Origin is required to ensure the game is up to date, but Steam is primarily used otherwise." From this, I suspect what is being inferred here is that the games will use the native Steam launcher, but will only use the Origin client for updates. However, it does still require Origin to be running in order to launch the game, which one can surmise would still be acting the part of DRM, much the same way Uplay does. So first, let's talk about the benefits to gamers, because in spite of what I suspect EA's intentions behind this to be, and in spite of the fact that Origin is still required to a lesser or greater extent, there are some benefits to be aware of. First off, there's the consumer advocacy component to consider. With Steam, you will have easy access to both user reviews and the community discussions thread. Now, this is something you just don't get on Origin, Uplay, or the Epic Games Store. Having access to player critique can be an extremely valuable tool for players to help determine if a particular game is worth their time or their money. That I consider to be a tremendous value add right there. Of course, there will always be YouTube and traditional media reviews of games, but real player feedback to be able to draw from directly from the store page is something that we just don't get with EA titles, and if nothing else, I would consider this to be tremendously beneficial right there. Now, the next aspect is something that is open to a little bit of a debate, and that is the Steam refunds. As many of you are aware, Steam refund policy dictates in most cases that you submit the refund request within 14 days of purchase and less than 2 hours of playtime. By way of comparison, EA's Origin refund policy states within 24 hours of launching the game, or 14 days from purchase if you haven't launched the game, also 14 days from the release date if you pre-ordered but haven't launched the game yet. However, it does not limit your ability to request a refund based upon the amount of time played within that 24-hour window. Now, ultimately, when dealing with a AAA title, neither of these solutions are ideal. The EA refund policy has the benefit of no playtime limit once you launch the game, but has the drawback of having only 24 hours once you do. The Steam's refund policy has the exact opposite problem. 2 hours of playtime in most instances of AAA games isn't even enough to get you out of the tutorial segment, and also the first segments of larger games tend to be somewhat cutscene laden, introducing you to the world and the characters. So often you'll find yourself with not enough playtime available within a AAA to even be able to formulate a firm opinion on the game one way or the other. And as these games are being bought through Steam, you will be limited to that 2 hours of playtime window. So while some people are lauding this as a good move for consumers in regards to the Steam refund policy, there are benefits and drawbacks no matter which of the two platforms you purchase the game on. Now, I wanted to talk about the benefits to EA and what they get out of this as the second point, but I don't think I can really do that without discussing the probable reasons why they are doing this. So let's talk about that next. As with everything EA, no discussion is made with the consumer in mind. Now, EA has been floundering hard when it comes to games outside of their EA Sports titles. Battlefield V or 5 or whatever created massive controversy and had severe issues to boot. Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA was nothing short of a joke, again in my opinion. Anthem was and is broken and fundamentally flawed. Mass Effect Andromeda was a complete flop. Apex Legends started out extremely strong thanks to EA's paying Twitch streamers massive amounts of money to promote their game, but has since begun circling the drain. Now, even as I'm recording this on a Saturday at 11:30 a.m., Apex Legends is down in the third column of games in terms of view rankings, having only 16.8 thousand viewers, being beat out by all the other current battle royales. Then there are the massive loot box controversies and deplorable actions EA has taken over the course of the past year alone. EA's actions in recent years have even gone so far as to see them include negative player perception over EA's games and business practices as a legitimate risk factor in their yearly SEC 10K reports. Now, in the 2019 10K report, we see EA state the following. We expect to continue to take actions to address concerns as appropriate, including actions that may result in additional expenditures and the loss of revenue. Negative sentiment about gameplay, fairness, or business practices, business models, or game content also lead to investigations or increased scrutiny from governmental bodies and consumer groups, as well as litigation, which, regardless of their outcome, may be costly, damaging to our reputation, and harm our business. And I thought that was interesting. So I decided to check back through EA's 10K filings, and from that I found that this has been a risk factor that EA has included in their filings since its first inclusion in 2014, where the wording of these risk factors have changed very little over the past 5 years. So from that, we've seen that EA has not only a problem with player perception, but their video game quality has clearly declined, while their visual and sound quality have increased, and unrest has steadily grown over the years, which has resulted in either decreased purchases of some games, the rapid decline of others, and as a result, EA has sought ways to improve revenue from a business perspective without actually addressing the underlying causes of the problems they face. So likely, EA decided they needed an easy PR victory. So they decided announcing a partnership that would be monetarily beneficial to them could be spun as a positive PR move. Which brings me to how and why this benefits EA directly. Well, there are a couple of different reasons. First, it does present their games, and more importantly to them, their Origin Access subscription service, to more eyeballs in a very straightforward manner. They also have the added benefit via Steam of winning some free PR points from the anti-Epic Games Store crowd. Now, admittedly, that part probably wasn't a factor in their thinking, but when you've got icing, you may as well put it on the cake. This also will grant EA access to a larger player base, as Steam is still the largest digital distribution storefront on PC, and as they will be integrating multiplayer between Steam and Origin, likely due to the fact that it will all run within the Origin client anyways, they inflate their numbers in their titles, and that would help stave off the circling the drain effect that their games commonly suffer from. So essentially, EA is paying Valve money by way of sales revenue in order to gain some easy PR, while at the same time they will easily be able to offset the percentage Valve takes by virtue of increased game sales and loot box microtransactions. After all, when has EA ever done something that wasn't run through a corporate cost-benefit analysis? And while some people have taken this to mean EA might be finally starting to wake up in terms of their horrendously bad public perception, you have to remember this is EA, and as such, this move was made out of nothing more than profit motivation. I'm a fan of the concept that a rising tide lifts all boats. A company does something good, the gamers benefit, and the company profits. There's usually nothing wrong with that. However, I would remind everyone that nothing whatsoever has changed in terms of EA's monetization schemes or their overall business model. They're still every bit as much loot box and live services oriented as they ever were. But also, motivations and intent aside, this does have the incidental side effect of allowing gamers interested in purchasing EA titles access to the user reviews on the Steam page, curator reviews, and the discussion forums as well. It allows people on Steam to voice their opinions in a manner that they just don't have outside of social media currently. And that is a good thing for gamers that EA likely hadn't considered, as their motivation was purely profit-based. Now, as I've said many times, and I'll continue to say until well after I'm blue in the face, critique is vital within the games industry. Critique provides perspective and information in a very real and meaningful way, and it is something that the games corporations have always sought to limit and avoid. Because legitimate criticism is the absolute antithesis to mindless hype, and providing players a voice helps foster the spread of information, not limiting it. And while I can't condone EA's actions and their severe corporate focus at the expense of what should be a creative endeavor, focusing on cheap, infinitely replicatable monetization and in-game gambling, this is still, albeit unintentionally, good for the consumer. Let's see how well it works out for them. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am Sid Alpha, and I'll see you next time.